Welcome. The theme for this yin yoga practice is called the belt of Sapphire, and it will begin with some breathing and some centering, and then it'll move into the yin yoga sequence, which starts off with saddle pose. Now, saddle pose in yin yoga is not necessarily the most accessible or least challenging posture. In fact, many of us find it very challenging, and so I have constructed a seat which I call the dragon saddle out of various props that I have here at home, although I don't expect anyone has near as many of this collection of props. So you might want to gather up a bunch of pillows and blankets and couch cushions and books to maybe create something like this to make this posture more accessible, since we're going to begin the yin posture sequence with saddle pose. We'll also be doing hand to big toe pose, and for most of us that requires a belt or a strap of some kind. Again, if you don't have a belt or a strap, you can improvise by using something like a towel or an old piece of clothing like a t-shirt. We'll also be doing a prone twist, and that might be a little bit more comfortable to do if you have a few pillows and blankets, or if you have a yoga bolster. So maybe decide if you would like to use props, get set up, and then we'll get started with the sequence. So we'll start the practice with a little bit of centering, a little bit of breath work, a little bit of warm up. So find a comfortable seat. You can be sitting cross-legged like this, or it can be sitting in a chair, or some other kind of accessible place where you can stay and feel solid and stable for a while. And then really pay attention to the stability, i.e. if you feel unstable, then do something about it. Maybe wiggle around a little bit. Feel the contacts that you're making between your body and whatever you're sitting on here. Maybe bring your spine to a nice neutral position. So for most of us, we do that by growing our spine long, which is metaphorical. We're actually trying to just bring our spine back to neutral, to the most stable place. You can work your upper body a little bit, maybe roll your shoulders up and back and down, and just soften all the muscles to just relax in your upper body. Maybe slightly tuck your chin, bring your head back so that it's back over your shoulders. Crown of your head feels like it's lifting up to the ceiling, and then relax the muscles of your face. Let the tension drain away. You can help by letting the mental stresses and tensions of the day melt away. Maybe you have concerns that you need to take care of later, but suspend them for the moment and let yourself be in the present moment with your practice. Notice your breath, which is happening in the present moment, your deep inhales and exhales. Go ahead and practice something that I just call simple belly breathing. And it's basically just a breath awareness technique. You draw attention down into your abdomen. And then as you inhale, you feel like you're filling up your abdomen full here. And then as you exhale, see if you can exhale a little bit longer, and the abdomen relaxes and slightly draws in. And then as you inhale, feel up your abdomen again. This is basically how we all breathe. This is diaphragmatic breathing, and we breathe with our diaphragm here. So it's just bringing awareness to that fact, and just noticing, and it's keeping us in the present moment. So do that for a few breaths here. Now you can just continue with the simple belly breathing if you would like to. I'll add a mental visualization to maybe help keep the concentration centered in the abdomen. So I call this the belt of sapphire breathing. So as you continue to breathe with your belly, maybe begin to visualize a bright blue orb on your left side here, right in the kind of the mid-waist region here. And then another blue orb in the very center of your torso. So not on the exterior, but inside your torso, kind of right in the middle of your torso. And then another blue orb of light here. So 3 blue orbs of light that kind of go across your entire waist here. Thus the belt of sapphire here, made up of three bright blue orbs of light. And as you're breathing, when you inhale, you can visualize those orbs of light getting a little bit more brighter, a little bit more lucid here. And then as you exhale, the brightness of these orbs of light soften. And maybe the color that you're imagining becomes clearer and becomes more vibrant here. And then as you inhale, it begins to brighten so much that maybe the blue turns almost white, almost overpowering. And then as you exhale, it softens and comes back to this very soft, deep blue color here. So a few more cycles with that visualization in mind, or with some other visualization that you would prefer here. At some point, softly drop the visualization. If your eyes were closed, gently open up your eyes. We'll do a few little just wiggling around here before we get into the long yin postures here. So let's start off with the twist. Bring your hands on the other side of your torso as you inhale. Inhale, make a big sweeping circle with your arms. Hands kind of meet up at top here. And then as you exhale, hands draw down and just gently twist over to your right side, just as far as you go until you feel stuck. Hands lower, maybe the left hand can rest on the right thigh, right hand behind you. Stay here for a couple of breaths. So inhale, go tall, bring your spine back to tall position. Exhale, see if you can twist a little bit more deeply here. We can add a lateral bend to this if you wish. So maybe on your next inhale and lift that back right arm up alongside your ear. Exhale and laterally side bend over the left thigh here. This doesn't have to be deep because we're not really warmed up yet here. And then inhale, bring yourself all the way slowly back up to center. We do that all on the other side. So we'll start with the big sweeping circle with the arms. And then exhale, gently lower the arms. Twist to the other side. Maybe spend a breath here to use the inhale to grow your spine long. Exhale, see if there's a little bit more twist, particularly in the upper spine here. You can just stay here in the twist, or if you want to do the lateral bend here, raise that left arm up into the air, up towards the ceiling, and very gently begin to laterally bend over the right thigh or the right knee. Maybe stay here for a breath, and then very gently bring yourself all the way back up. Come back to center. If you need to do a counter twist, maybe do a counter twist here. And then we'll get started with the first yin posture. And as promised, the first yin posture is saddle pose, which when I create a yin sequence, I normally don't start with that pose. I often end with it because it can be a real challenging posture for most of us, particularly those of us who are programmed to sit in a chair, because saddle pose is the direct counter pose to all the shortened tissues that kind of shrink wrap when we spend long hours sitting. So what I've done here is create a possible seat that takes care of some of the pressure points. So we'll stay in saddle for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, depending on when you work yourself into saddle. If you know what saddle is, you love it, you need no props for it, then just go ahead and go right into it and just reside there for a few minutes. So just a reminder as to what saddle pose looks like. You sit back on or in between your heels, knees are in close or out wide, and then you lower yourself back just as far as you go. And if you're winching at seeing me do that, then this was what the setup is for. So I'm going to use the dragon saddle. And I'll show you some of the features of the dragon saddle. So I don't know where the difficulty is in this posture, but it can be in several different places. Maybe the knees don't flex deeply enough. So I'm sitting up on some height I created with blocks and adding so that my knees are not as deeply flexed as they normally are. Maybe that helps relieve a lot of pressure and pain. I also have these soft blankets under my shins. Maybe that releases pressure and pain. Maybe my ankles don't flex so my feet are completely flat. Notice that with these two blankets, I now have a little bit of space so that my feet can stay slightly flexed here. And maybe that helps with ankle issues here. So this is the setup so far. And maybe I can't lean back all the way to the floor. So now this is where this ramp of blocks and bolsters, which you can make out of books and blankets and pillows, come in handy. And then I just lean back, and maybe I need another bolster. Or maybe this is too many. Maybe I could take one of the bolsters away. But you just slowly take your time, lean back. Or maybe you decide, you now have an idea of how you can construct your own set of props for this pose here. And then this is where we'll stay. So we'll stay here for maybe 3 more minutes or so, just to get oriented here. But always remind yourself that the time spent in these postures is variable depending on our accessibilities. So if you only want to stay 1 or 2 minutes, then that's fine here. One of the properties of saddle pose is a back bend. And a lot of you can maybe feel the compression in the back of your spine if you are leaning back. The other part of saddle pose is that it puts pressure on the psoas myofascia that runs through the front of your hip bone, plus on the fronts of your thighs, and a lot of us are feeling that too. All of that is creating too much pain, even with this seat. You can substitute Sphinx as the back bend, and I'll just remind you as to what Sphinx is. Sphinx is where you just lie prone on the floor, legs are comfortably extended behind you, and then bring your elbows underneath your torso, shoulder width apart, and then relax the muscle fiber in your torso. Let your spine sag to actually create a gentle compression in your lumbar, in your sacral part of your spine, your low back here. So this can be a great substitute if you're saying, yeah, not saddle, not today. Otherwise, we'll kind of just continue our dragon saddle seat right here. Got about another minute left if you're still in saddle here. Again, you can come out when you want to, but I will quickly remind you of the principles of a yin practice. So we're trying to relax the muscle fiber, stay for a long time to let the traction sink into the connective tissue. So the first principle is called finding your edge, in that you find your stopping point. And this is what this elaborate construction of props is trying to demonstrate. It's like this, for some people, you might need this set of props to find your stopping point. Trying to do this without any props is not helpful. All you're going to do is be in pain and injure yourself. So this is a much better. This is in some sense, a more advanced option to do something that you can actually do pain and injury free. So this is part of finding your edge. Second principle is called stillness. Now you need patience. Now you need fortitude to just stay for a while. And then the final version principle is time. So time is the dimension that we really bring in to this practice. And we've been here for a goodly amount of time if you've been residing here in the saddle this whole time. So good news is you can come out of saddle now. Take your time. This is not a fast moving practice. So slowly bring yourself up. Slowly bring yourself forward. And since a lot of us had our legs deeply flexed in this posture, probably a good counter pose is to do some sort of exercise where you extend each leg out long to kind of get through the stiff feeling that developed there. You can be doing that. I'm going to be clearing my mat of all of these props as we get ready for the next yin posture. So the next yin posture on deck is a posture known as dragon pose. And we'll do just the basic version of dragon, at least that's what I will cue. But if you have your own version of dragon that you would like to do, then you can practice that here. Sometimes dragon pose is kind of hard on the knees, so you can always leave some padding in place just to kind of pad the knee or the shin in dragon. So for dragon pose, we'll come to hands and knees, and then we'll bring the left foot up between the hands, inch the right knee and the right leg back. Notice that I've got the knee on the padding here, and maybe you need padding, maybe you don't here. And then the idea is to sink and settle, let your hips, let your legs kind of relax, and you sink into your version of this low lunge, this basic dragon pose. Maybe you need blocks underneath your hands here, or some books here. Or maybe you need some more padding underneath that ankle here. Can stay here. We'll stay here for about 3 minutes on this side. Or if you have another version of dragon that you would rather practice, you can try that. You can try high flying dragon, which places an emphasis on tugging at and pulling on the connective tissue down here in the front thigh and the psoas again. You can do low flying dragon, which is bringing your hands on the inside of that left foot, coming down onto your forearms. This is also called lizard pose here. This gets, usually for most of us, a little bit deeper into the hips here, and maybe that's what you would like. Maybe you're here in dragon and you're deciding it's just not your cup of tea at all. Another alternative is called inverted dragon. So you can try that. You can either stay here in dragon, or if you're trying to find something else that works a little bit better for you, slowly make your way onto your back. Right leg's extended. Draw the left knee and the left leg in towards your torso. Maybe give it a hug with your arms. Maybe that's enough traction for now. So you stay here, or you can raise the bottom of your foot to face up towards the ceiling. Maybe clasp your shin, or maybe find the bottom of your foot and let the left knee sink down towards the floor. This is often called the half happy baby pose in yoga classes, but in my in class I call it inverted dragon, since it's a modified form of dragon pose. Sure. So we'll just come back to basic dragon here. And again, the idea is in yin, it can be a little bit uncomfortable because you're feeling the pressure, you're feeling the traction, you're feeling your limit, your own edge, your own range of motion. And when we come to our edge, the edge is always feels kind of uncomfortable. but it can't be injurious. And so that's what you're thinking about in your mind right now, is like, okay, am I hurting myself, or am I just uncomfortable? And if the answer is I'm hurting myself, then you're not doing anything useful. You are just hurting yourself. But if you're feeling the pressure, then this is where the patience and the fortitude and the endurance comes in. It's like, okay, you're just noticing it, and you're rewiring your brain to say, okay, this is just pressure, and this is part of the practice. If you don't know if it's pressure or if it's injury, then err on the side of caution and back yourself off a little bit. Otherwise, we'll stay here a couple more breaths here in Dragon. So use your breath to maybe sink and soften one final time here. And then we'll slowly come out of Dragon. As you do so, the counterpose to this is a pose that I call half monkey pose. Slowly shift your hips back over that back heel. So you're bending that right knee, and then you're trying to straighten out the left leg. That's going to feel good after it's been bent here, and particularly after we did saddle pose. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. You're just going to go until this feels stuck. You can kind of move your foot around here a little while here. And then you can slowly bring yourself all the way out of Dragon Pose. Maybe do some other little wiggling around here to work out the kinks, because we'll do the other side of the Dragon Pose. When you're ready, come back to hands and knees. Bring that right foot up in between your hands and inch the left knee back. Decide if you want padding anywhere. Decide if you want some blocks underneath your hands or some books here. Maybe you need to do upside down dragon for this side. And then settle here. Soften your hips, soften your legs, soften your torso. Head can be up, but I like to hang my head in dragon here. And then get in for some time. So I'm recording this yin yoga sequence during the winter months from a location in the northern hemisphere. And I'm going to talk about one of the most famous asterisms of stars that one sees in the evening and the night skies during winter and into early spring. And I'm calling it the Belt of Sapphire. And it consists of 3 bright stars, not the brightest stars, but 3 bright stars that are close together in a straight line. And because of that, and because it's near the celestial equator, these 3 bright stars can be seen from pretty much any place on the surface of the Earth. And because of that, they are the most famous group of stars in human history. Maybe the only place that you can't really see them is at the North Pole and the South Pole. But everywhere else, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, you can see these stars, and they have played an important part of the storytelling and the mythology of all cultures almost all around the world. Like I said, they're not the brightest stars, but they are pretty bright. They're among the top 50 bright stars. And because of that, they're easily recognizable. And that's one reason why I wanted to talk about them, is because if you are unfamiliar with the night sky, and you don't know what any of the stars are, and you want to start to learn a little bit about the stars, these 3 stars are probably the easiest 3 stars to recognize, because they are so bright. They're in an area of the sky that has other very bright stars around it. It's in the winter time in the northern hemisphere where it's very clear at night. So they stand out like these bright balls of sapphire. So we have about 6 more breaths here in Dragon Pose. By the way, give yourself permission to come out if you've had enough. Otherwise, if things are achy, maybe Find some more endurance to stay. Use your breath to maybe calm some things down that are maybe getting a little bit desperate, but not painful here. Just one more breath here. And slowly begin to come out of your version of dragon. You can try this half monkey counter pose again. So what you're doing is you're just simply kind of working yourself back, walking that back hip over the back ankle, and then trying to straighten out and extend the front leg until you're feeling a goodly amount of something in the back of that leg. Maybe stay here for a while. You can even kind of maybe sway a little back and forth. And then at some point, slowly bring yourself forward and completely come out of dragon pose here. And then if there's other things, some other counter poses that you would like to do, please do them. And I'll get set up for the next yin posture. The next yin posture is a sequence of hand to big toe poses, which are basically supine hip and leg openers here. And this is where you'll need a belt or a strap of some kind here, or maybe a t-shirt or towel. So make your way onto your back. Maybe start out with knees bent, feet on the floor. So you start out feet on the floor here. Draw your right knee in towards your torso, and then take whatever you're using as a belt, wrap it around the bottom of the right foot, and then extend the right leg forward towards the wall in front of you. Clasp your belt with both hands. And then lay your head, your shoulders, your torso comfortably back on the floor. Start to raise the straight leg up towards the ceiling just as far as it goes until you start feeling. So you're moving by feel here. I like this pose because you move by feel. So you keep moving that feet up. Now, those of you with large ranges of motion, you can just maybe take your arm and catch your big toe. Thus the name of the posture, hand to big toe pose. Most of us, maybe we have to use some sort of belt here. So the leg raises as much, and the knee doesn't have to be straight. Notice that my leg is not perfectly straight here, but I am feeling a lot in this back leg here. So this is the beginning, this is the posture. Now we have several variations of this posture to do, so we're only going to stay here for a couple of minutes in this posture. And you can just stay here as long as you're feeling something. Now, if you bring your leg too far in, you might feel pain. That's too far. If you're feeling nothing, then bring your leg in so you can really play around and find your edge here. You can stay here, or the left leg can actually extend. Now, when you extended the left leg, if that created pain somewhere, then you can keep the left leg bent. Otherwise, the left leg can just rest on the ground here. And we could stay here as long as we wanted to if we could hold this leg in place. Now, there's a way that you can use a really long strap to wrap around your body to hold this leg in place here. The problem with this is, even though we're trying to relax and let it be yin in the leg and in the hip, it's really yang in the arm. So we're holding our belt with our hands, and it gets tiring after a while because we're really working our muscles in our arms and our hands to hold the strap. So this is why I'm just using shorter times here, because this is one of 4 orientations that we have to do. And by the end of the 4th orientation, our legs will be nicely stretched. Our hands will probably be tired here. Unless, again, you're really flexible and you can just like lazily hold on to your toe with your hand here. For me, I'm a big stiff guy. And so it takes a lot of strength to hold my leg in place to where I'm feeling something. That said, about 3 or 4 more breaths here. So decide what you're feeling in this leg. If there's no feeling at all, it means you need to adjust your edge, bring that leg in a little bit more. If you're feeling too much, it's getting dramatic and injurious, then you back yourself off here. But from here, we'll move into the next orientation, the next yin posture, if you will. And that is taking this right leg and moving it out to the right, just down as far as it goes here. So cross the strap with the right hand. And I'm going to reach up close to my foot. Bring the left hand down, either in an outrigger or maybe the left hand is on the thigh to keep the left thigh down. And then very slowly just begin to open up and lower that right leg out to the right here. It will stop at some point. For some people, maybe they make it onto the floor, but if it's just floating, it can just float. Or maybe you need something underneath that leg to stabilize it. So grab a block or a bolster, or if you don't have those things, then maybe a pillow will do here. And then left arm can be wherever you want it here for this posture. Again, you're trying to find something. See if the sensation that's in the leg and the hip has changed. Again, knee doesn't have to be perfectly straight. If you're feeling nothing, then you pull on the strap until the leg is high enough to where you're feeling something. Then you use your breath to try to soften your thoughts. Soften the muscle engagement that doesn't really need to be there. Because in the end, we're wanting the muscles to be quiet and soft so that more of the stress, the traction of the posture goes into the connective tissues, things like ligaments and fascia and even bones, but particularly joint capsules, all made up of synovial fluid and other kinds of connective tissue type materials here. Again, we won't be staying quite so long in these orientations. We're almost done with this one, so just a couple more breaths here. Maybe you need to adjust something here. And then when you're ready to come out, slowly bring that foot back up. And yeah, my right hand is getting tired already from holding that. Maybe hold the strap with both hands, pull that foot back here just for 1 or 2 more breaths to feel the oomph in the leg one final time. And then you can gently bend the knee, release the strap, release the leg, and can kind of bend the knees, do any kind of little counter motions that we like. Maybe bring the knees into the chest, give the knees a hug, maybe do waterfall pose here for a while. Maybe reclined windshield wipers. Feet are on the ground wide apart. You just kind of wave the knees back and forth gently. And then we have that all coming up on the other side. So both knees bent. Take your belt. Draw the left knee in. Wrap the belt around the left foot. Extend the left legs forward towards the wall in front of you. Grab your belt. And then head, neck, shoulders, all comfortably lying on the ground. By the way, you could actually do this with a pillow underneath your head if you like that. Ooh, that's actually feeling pretty good. And then you just gently walk your hands up what you're using as a belt until you're feeling enough oomph in this left leg here. Right leg can stay bent, or you can extend the right leg out straight here. And then we'll stay for just a couple minutes on this side. Again, you can stay longer if you can figure out a way to wrap a strap around your whole body so that you can release your arms. Then you can essentially stay here for however long you want to. Come back to your breath. Come back to this idea of softening the muscle fiber in the place where you're creating traction, which in this case, the emphasis is the leg, maybe down into the hip. Definitely not yin in the arms or the hands. The hands and the arms are working, so they're in a state of yang here, which again is why we're not staying so long in this orientation. Bring yourself back. Use your breath to do that. Use the sensation. Use the uncomfortable sensation you might be feeling to stay in the present moment. This is the idea to yoga practice in general, is to understand, to focus on the present moment. And oftentimes we take those sensations that are often uncomfortable. That's just perspective. And then deciding that it's okay to reside here if there's no trauma or injury occurring here. So we have about 5 more breaths on this side. So in our modern Western culture, the 3 stars that I'm describing, the 3 bright kind of whitish blue stars in the night sky, they're in a constellation known as Orion, and they're more commonly known in Western culture because they come from Greek and Roman culture. They're known as Orion's belt. Orion is an anthropomorphic figure who represents this ancient hunter. So the constellation Orion itself predates antiquity, predates written history. And the 3 stars represent the waist of the hunter, or the belt of the hunter here. We're moving into the next orientation of this posture. So maybe take your left hand, grab the strap with the left hand. Right arm comes out into an outrigger position, or maybe down to the thigh, and we're going to open up that left leg out to the left just as slowly and far as it goes until it stops. Again, it might make it to the ground, maybe it floats, maybe you need to put some books underneath that leg to prop it up. And then find again, this knee can be slightly bent, it can be straight. Find what works for you here. And then we'll stay here a couple more minutes here in this orientation. The Arabic names. So the stars officially are known by their Arabic names. And the star, if you're in the northern hemisphere and you're looking at Orion, the star that's either the bottom or leftmost star is a star by the name of Alnitak. The middle star is named Al-Nalam, and the right star to the right is named Mintaka. Actually, I don't think it matters if you're in the right north hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. As the stars rise, Mintaka rises first, and then Al-Nalam rises next, and then Alnitak is the 3rd star to rise of this trio of stars. If you go back and look at the roots of the names and the meanings of these names, Alnitak and Mintaka refer to a rope or a belt, some kind of waist thing that holds trousers up like a belt or a rope here. And the middle star, Al-Nalam, that name refers to a string of pearls, or in some cases it's translated as a string of sapphire. So if you take the 2 outside stars, belt, and the middle star is pearl or sapphire, this is where I come up with belt of sapphire. Because they are whitish blue stars, so they can resemble pearls, or they can resemble sapphires. And in many cultures, they are seen as some sort of belt, although in a lot of other cultures, they're seen as many other things. What is common among them is almost all cultures have stories about these 3 stars. Time is up for this side. So slowly bring that left leg back up to center. Maybe grab your belt with both hands, bring that foot in, and then finally go ahead and release. And you can always groan in yin yoga. You can do something with that left leg here. And then you can work out the kinks here. Again, you can decide what kind of counter pose you would like to do here for a moment to work out the kinks. And then maybe slowly roll over to one side, bring yourself up to seated. And we're getting ready for a prone twist. Now I'll use a bolster, but you might have to set up pillows just to create a little bit of softness underneath your torso. So, if you have a yoga bolster, then take a yoga bolster, place the yoga bolster, I'm gonna move it this way here. Or you can have two pillows end to end here, or maybe some folded blankets end to end if you don't have a yoga bolster. Sit perpendicular to the bolster, so the long end of the bolster is pointed this way, or the pillows. My legs are pointed this way, and then I bend my knees and sweep my shins back, so that in this case the outside of my right hip is up against this bolster here. And my feet can do whatever they need to be doing to be comfortable. Good thing that you can't see my feet here, because your feet need to do what they need to do to be comfortable here. Grow up tall through your torso. We're going to twist now. And then twist your torso to face the bolster with your upper torso. So the upper torso is now facing the bolster here. And then slowly walk yourself down to rest on the bolster here. So use your hands and arms, work yourself down. Now when you get to your head, this is where you have to make a decision. You can turn, if you want a complete twist, turn your head away from your knees. And then let your head rest on the bolster. Now, for some of us, that might create too much pain in our neck. So if that's happening to you, just turn your head same direction as your knees here. By the way, there's nothing sacred about the orientation of your head. As you lay here, if you need to move your head around to accommodate pain in the neck, then go ahead and do that here. Otherwise, find a place where you can soften and settle. And sometimes you have to adjust your arms here so that you can really sink and rest into the bolster. So the idea really is an idea of surrender here. Yeah. You're surrendering into this twist here. You sink and soften. And if this twist is not working for you, if you know of another kind of restorative twist, then maybe opt for that. We'll stay here for a pretty long time, so 4 minutes on a side in these twists. So we've been here a little while. We'll stay here for a few more minutes or so. Come back to your breath and allow yourself to soften. Remind yourself that you don't have to stay here for the 4 minutes if this gets too traumatic. But you also might find that you might really relax into this, and maybe you can stay here for a lot longer. And you always can, because of course this is just a video and you can pause it or just ignore it. Spend as much time as you wish here. So this belt of sapphire, these 3 bright stars in a row, which are the most identifiable collection of stars in the night sky, like I said, are seen as the waist or the belt of an anthropomorphic figure of a great hunter. But in other cultures, they're seen as other things. In Portuguese and Spanish traditions, they're seen as the 3 Marys. In the Christian tradition, there's often seen as the 3 kings. In Brazil, they make up part of the leg of an old man with his walking stick. In Australia, the three stars in some native traditions are seen as three brothers that are sitting in a canoe. In some native African tribes, they see the three stars as three zebras. And the nebula and stars that are below or above, depending on what hemisphere you're in, those stars that we normally associate with Orion's sword, in that same African tradition or African culture, those stars are seen as an arrow. So there's an arrow and there's three zebras in that configuration. So every culture has their story about these three stars, and they're easily visible on a clear night in the northern hemisphere, in the winter or the summer in the southern hemisphere. And so they're obvious. There's something obvious that we can grasp, and from there we can use them to find other stars. Same thing is happening in yoga. So when we come to a yoga practice, start practicing these shapes, we start with something that's obvious, like our breath. We can all feel our breath. Can feel the obvious stuckness when we twist or move our body to its range of motion at some point. Traction and pressure take hold, and we feel that. It's obvious. And so that's what we work with in the beginning. We work with our stopping points. Our stopping points are obvious. Maybe frustrating, because maybe our ego wants our stopping points to be different. That's not the point, is for it to be different. The point is to just notice it, and to notice what's obvious. In the night sky, these three bright stars are obvious. So because they're bright and because they make this perfect line here, this belt of sapphire. So we're slowly coming out of this side. If you've been here the whole time, take your time. You might notice the reverberation as you come out. Use your hands and your arms to lift yourself up. So press your hands into the floor. Slowly bring yourself all the way up, and if your head and neck were in one orientation that whole time, very slowly unwind your head and your neck, and it might be really, really achy. So you can slowly move your head and your neck around. You can kind of slowly regain your orientation. And then from here, we have the other side of the twist to do here. So you can either move the bolster or you can move yourself. So this time, the outside of the other hip. So I've got the left hip now outside up against the bolster here. Knees are bent, pointing perpendicular to the bolster, or 90 degrees to the bolster. Feet are swept back here. Go up tall to create a nice neutral spine, and then twist. You can just twist in the upper body more. Maybe get a little bit of twist in the lumbar and the sacrum, but it's mainly the upper torso that twists. Face the bolster with your upper torso, and then very slowly lower yourself onto the bolster, and then have that conversation with your head and your neck as to which way it needs to turn. And then from here, settle, soften, and sink into the bolster, into the pillows, whatever you're using as padding. Some people won't use any props when they do this, or just have their head and torso lying on the floor. So you can maybe find your own version of this here. So even though the three stars seem to be right next to each other, in reality, these three stars are actually very far away from us, very far away from each other. So it turns out these three, there's two reasons. This is an oversimplification, but there's two reasons why stars are bright in the night sky. They're either close to us or they're big and bright. In the case of
the belts of sapphire. Those 3 stars are bright because they're huge. Then they are not close by. They're just gigantic, bright, blue supergiant stars. Alnitak is a blue supergiant star. It's actually a multiple star system, but its main component is this huge star that's over 20 times the mass of the sun. Now, it's a young star. The sun is 5 billion years old, but Alnitak is only about 5 million years old. So, very, very young star, which is the case for all 3 stars. It's so huge and so bright that we can see it clearly as a bright star, even though it's 1,200 light years away. 1,200 light years is not close. It's a pretty far away star, because it's so bright and so huge, because it has a few other components to it besides its main component, we see it as a bright star. This is the same story of the other 2 stars. So the middle star, Alnilam, is an even a bigger star. So Alnilam is a true heavyweight. Now, it's 2,000 light years away. So again, it's not close by. But it is believed that Alnilam is somewhere between 30 to 60 times the mass of our own sun. Our own sun, pretty big. Alnilam is maybe 40, 50 times the size of the sun. And because it's so big and because it's so bright, you can see it easily, even from 2,000 light years away. Mintaka is similar to Alnitak. It's 1,200 light years away, 1,200 light years away. And it, again, is 20 to 30 times the mass of the sun. So all 3 stars are very young stars, only a few million years old, all very huge and very bright. So they're all heavyweights. They're all these gigantic, young, bright stars that just happen from our field of view to form this perfect line, this perfect asterism that we see in the winter sky. So some stars are bright because they're close. Turns out that the brightest star in the night sky is a star by the name of Sirius. Sirius is actually in the same area of the sky as these 3 stars. Sirius is not bright because it's big. Sirius is bright because it's close. Sirius is one of our next door neighbors. It's only roughly 10 light years away or so from us. So not very far. And because it's so close, it appears bright. Not the case for the belt of sapphire. It's bright because all the young stars are massive. We've been here in this supine twist long enough. So plant your hands onto the floor and then use your arms to slowly bring yourself up. Slowly unwind from that twist. And then from here, that was the last long-held yin posture before resting here, finding our resting pose. A little bit of integration before we move into Shavasana. So make your way onto your back. And then bend both knees, put both feet on the floor. So head, neck, torso is comfortable here. We'll do just a final hip opener here. So take your right leg, bring your right thigh in towards your torso, and then wrap your right thigh on top of your left thigh. Bring both knees in towards your torso. So you can take your hands, grab your knees, and use your hands to kind of pull your knees in. For some of us, this is enough. So if you're feeling lovely pressure here, just kind of hug in the knees here for a moment. If you can reach, take your hands and see if you can reach your feet. So right hand finds the left foot, left hand finds the right foot. And then use your hands and your arms and gently pull your feet down towards the floor and then towards your armpits. until you're feeling some pressure somewhere. A lot of times it's in the outside of our hips here. Maybe a couple of breaths here. And then at some point release, unwind the legs, and then we do that on the other side. So bring the left leg in, wrap it around the right leg here. Draw the knees in, and maybe stay here, or find your feet, and then pull your feet in towards your head or towards the top of your torso. So you're feeling some goodly amount of pressure somewhere. Maybe one more breath here. And then go ahead and release your feet. Any other kind of movements or postures or integration that you would like to do. Maybe some sacral circles. So draw both knees into your chest and make circles with your legs, and notice the changing pressure of your low back on the floor as you make these knee circles. Maybe go in the other direction for a couple cycles. And then slowly bring yourself into your version of resting pose. I'm going to suggest traditional Shavasana today, which is just lying on the floor on your back, arms and legs comfortably extended here. And if that's too painful for you, then try something else. Maybe legs up the wall, maybe seated in quiet meditative position here. And then just take a few moments to soften and release. Maybe do a quick body scan. So you can start with your head, or you can start with your feet and your toes. And if there's any residual muscular engagement in your feet or your legs or your hips, torso, arms, maybe head or neck, stop a moment and see if you can soften and release. So I'm kind of a mental creature, so I tend to hold a lot of tension in my face. That's usually where I'm kind of concentrating, where I might have some stressful or tension, muscle tension. Maybe it's my jaw that's wanting to be tight. Maybe other places, maybe somewhere down in the legs. Maybe notice your breath here, and we'll try a final visualization here in a resting posture. So I mentioned that these 3 stars, this belt of sapphire, known throughout many different cultures as many different things. On the Great Plains of North America, the Native Americans often see these 3 stars as 3 vertebrae, or 3 parts of a spine, a very young bison, because of course herds of bison on the North American plain were critical to survival of the nomadic natives that lived there. And so they saw the stars. The stars symbolized the backbone, the spine, this great animal that they so depended on for their survival. We too can visualize these 3 stars, and a little bit of a visualization here as we lie quietly in our resting pose. And we can visualize each parts of our spine, one of these stars. So if you are lying on the floor, you can feel your low back, your sacrum, the top of your hips touching the floor. It's one contact point. Think of that as one of the stars, one of these bright blue supergiants, this contact point. And then feel your upper torso. So your upper back, around your shoulder blades, somewhere is also touching the ground. That's the other star on the other side of the 3 stars. You can visualize a blue orb of light there. And then the middle star can be your lumbar spine. That's that light arch in between the upper and the lower spine. So there might be a place where your back is not touching the floor, or it's making a slight arch. That's where your lumbar curve is. At the center of that, visualize this middle star. So you have 3 stars, 3 different points in the back of your spine. See if you can feel and notice those 3 points. And again, maybe the visualization of these blue orbs that grow in brightness with each inhale and soften with each exhale brings awareness to the back of your torso, to your spine as you soften, as you rest here. So a few more breaths. At some point, begin to deepen your breath and start making little motions. Maybe start the motion in the tips of your fingers, into your fingers, and then into your wrists, to the tips of your toes, and the rest of your feet, and into your ankles, maybe legs and arms, maybe head and neck. Gently and slowly begin to rock back and forth. And then at some point, gently, softly bend your knees and roll over to one side. When you get there, stay there for a moment. Thank yourself for your practice. Thank yourself for your being, your manifestation. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're feeling ready, bring yourself up to a nice, stable, comfortable seat. When you have found that, grow your spine back to a nice, stable, neutral position. Bring your hands together in front of heart center. And I'll end this practice with an Om. You can either join in or simply listen to my voice. The inner starlight in me honors the inner starlight in you. Namaste.